morning.
Morning.
We embarked on this path of bringing people together around food because we believe that so many of the challenges faced by humanity today are rooted in the food that we eat. And so here also lay the solutions to these great challenges. And there is enormous potential for those of you exploring ventures and new careers to contribute to these solutions.
My sister Dana and I grew up at the greenhouses at Café Gardens, just a couple miles from here. And like many of the young people growing up in a small town, we could not wait to get out and explore the world. And that we did. While studying environmental sciences, we explored from the Pacific Islands to Central America. And for all of the youth in the room, I highly recommend do everything you can to get out and explore. There are so many ways to do that on a budget through your education. And so that was a really big doorway into this field of food for us. And no matter where on the planet we explored, we were struck by the way that food shapes culture, environmental integrity, landscape, health of the people, and witnessing the way the globalized industrial food system ripples out into the far reaches of the world where you least expect it. So we went to the depths of the Peruvian Amazon, to remote Greek islands, to the hills of Turkey, and we were deeply removed by the potential of food to create or destroy cultural and biological diversity. We felt moved to be agents of change, and the farther we traveled, the more we realized the potential in our own backyard here in Cooperstown. So Origins Café was born out of our prayer to weave healing connections here, from seed to soil, from grower to consumer, to strengthen our community through the connection with those who nourish us. And our life's work here is to inspire conscious consumption and responsible global citizenship. The founding mission of Creating Origins is this: together, with our food choices, we can create a future of food in which small farms thrive and biodiversity prospers. Change starts here. And most importantly, we're inspired to inspire the next generation of changemakers to realize their ability to shape the future through food. So to meet this goal, we've been going into Cooperstown schools and having some conversations with some of the junior high and high school classes. And sometimes we start our conversations by using our imaginations. So we can do that now. So imagine the world in 2050. The kids did some quick math. Most of them realized they'd be in their 50s and they'd be old. And we say, how old will you be? And where will you live? And what will you be doing at that time? 33 years, most of you know, flies. But to them, that's an eternity. And then we pose introduce some of the scientific projections by the UN and by climate scientists that in the year 2050, just 33 years, we're expected to have an additional 2.2 billion human bodies to nourish on this planet. And we can expect climate to contribute to extreme weather events, extreme droughts, extreme flooding, and storms that will intensify with time. These are pretty commonly agreed upon scientific projections. It also takes 1,000 years on this planet for the Earth to generate 3 centimeters of topsoil, and at current rates of soil degradation, we will be left with a quarter of this topsoil that our parents' generation had to work with when they started. So there are some staggering statistics and projections coming by the year 2050. Needless to say, these factors will heavily impact our ability to grow food for a larger population, and all of these challenges can be exacerbated or improved by the way we choose to grow our food in years to come. But we can't let these projections intimidate or scare us. And Einstein said it best when he said we can't solve problems by the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. We need to realize our vast potential here for growth and change and step into our power, aligning our unique gifts and passions to be part of the solution while exploring career paths and new ventures. It's going to take ingenuity, creativity, and collaboration.
One organization that has been really influential to us is the International Slow Food Network. Have any of you guys heard of that organization? Yes, so the International Slow Food Movement has chapters in over 160 different countries, and its values are based on food that is good, clean, and fair. So good in the sense that it is delicious, nutritious, and cultivates community and connections in the places where it's grown. Clean in that it protects the environment and natural resources for generations to come. And fair in that it is fair for the workers who are involved, for the land, and for those who consume it. And through the slow food conferences that we've attended in Italy during the last 6 years, we have been connected to the youth food movement, the International Youth Food Movement. And this network brings together future leaders, entrepreneurs, and consumers who wish to inspire change in the world through food. And it's not necessarily just for young people, but for those who are interested in what this means in the future, what our choices now could mean for future generations.
So youth food movement groups all around the world right now are creating original and engaging events to raise awareness about food issues and providing a means to take action. The youth food movement is open to all who want to take action and fix this broken food system. It's not an age requirement at all. It's a conscious response to fast food culture with a return to slow food. So here in Cooperstown, we initiated the youth food movement to connect our community to this global network. And last week, actually, right in this room, we had 60 students from Cooperstown and Oneonta schools serve dinner to about 100 of our community members here. And here's some of them. And we were just so inspired to hear their thoughts about what they'd like to see in the future of food. And the meal was sourced from the school garden here and also from local farms. So we're really looking forward to growing this movement within the schools here and also reaching out to area schools. And there's just a lot of potential, and we've been able to access that just within our limited time in the school so far. So lots to look forward to there. So, this is in our school garden here, preparing some of the ingredients for that meal. The average age of today's farmer is around 60, and by the year 2050, we're going to see a historic turnover in land stewards. But the ways to get involved in food and agriculture, as you know, are incredibly diverse beyond being a farmer. So we have with us here today some of our extended youth food movement family. These are activists committed to being part of the solution and bringing about positive change through food. Each of them represents some of the many career possibilities involved as your food moves from seed to table. So now each of these individuals will be sharing a bit about their personal inspiration and motivation to be part of this movement. So we'll be starting with seed, moving to the farm, to the market, to the kitchen, and on to opportunities in government and around the world. So first we have Ian Robb here from Turtle Tree Seed Initiative, who will share a bit about his work and opportunities that lie in the field of seed. Maybe how you got it. There you go.
All right. Good morning to you. It's very nice to be here. The first time for me in this area. I live in Columbia County, and it's about 2 hours from here. And my whole adult life has been in agriculture. I guess you can hear from the accent, I'm not from Brooklyn. But I was born in Scotland, in Aberdeen, and in a city. But right from a boy, I wanted to live and work outdoors in the countryside. And that opportunity came to me when I was 19, when I was aware of an apprenticeship in horticulture in something called the Campbell Rudolsteiner Schools. I didn't know anything about that and what the schools were, but I knew I wanted to do an apprenticeship in horticulture. And it turned out that this particular school was a part of an international movement, and this school was for children with special needs. So actually, as it turned out, my apprenticeship in horticulture and learning about plants also involved children with special needs. And that has been a thread that I have followed through all my adult life. And like what you heard before, yes, it was great to see the world. I spent a year in Africa, also with the Campbell movement, until I came to the States in 1981 to start a farm in Massachusetts. And what we started there was one of the first CSAs. It was called Brookfield Farm. It's been going since 1986. And I was primarily the vegetable grower and took great pride in growing the best possible crops that I could share with the families that participated in Brookfield Farm as a community farm. And this was another type of working with people, that this was a conscious community of who I was growing for. So up until then, I'd been aware of who I was growing with, and now I'm aware of who I'm growing for. And these are folks that are wanting to become aware of where their food is growing and getting to know the farmer. There were two moments during my 12 years there in Massachusetts that ran what is the expression, ran a chord, or it made me stop and think what I was doing. All my energy was in producing the finest vegetables I could grow. We had many, many varieties. We were trying to supply families with food year round. But there was a school group would come to the farm, and one little girl, I guess probably these children were about 10 or 11-year-olds, spoke up. And the job of the day was to harvest carrots. And with great enthusiasm, this was the last row of carrots of the year, and I encouraged the children, now if we all work hard, by lunchtime we'll have all the carrots out of the ground, and we'll store them, and we'll be able to enjoy them over winter. This little girl piped up and said, "But farmer, Ian, if you harvest all the carrots, you pull them all out of the ground, how will we have carrots next year?" "Well, I'll buy more seed." Oh, a little bit of disappointment, you know. And she was right. You know, if we get rid of all the carrots and eat them all, how will we have seed next year? It's not as simple as all that to get carrot seed, but she had this right question. And then, maybe it was about a year later, there was a group of women from Bolivia who came to the United States to look at different farm ideas, to bring back best ideas back to their country. So I was very flattered that they chose Brookfield Farm to visit. And we went around, I showed all the different crops, what have you. And like many things in life, pride comes before the fall, in that they said, "And where's your seed garden?" "What do you mean, my seed garden?" "Well, where do you save the seed from your best plants so you have seed next year?" "I don't have one." "Well, where do you get your seed?" "Well, in winter time I get about a dozen catalogues, and I pour through the catalogues and I choose all the seeds." And I could see the disappointment in their face. They did not understand the concept that here was someone who would grow food but would not save their own seed. Well, that was a moment in time. I moved then in 1995 to Campbell Village, where I am now, which is in Copake, New York, which is an intentional community with 100 adults with what is called developmental differences. It's a residential community of 250 people. And there maybe I didn't say it at the beginning, but when I started my apprenticeship, I wanted to learn everything in agriculture. And I still do. And I guess one lifetime is not enough, because it's so vast. So starting off as a vegetable gardener, I was able to become a dairy farmer for 7 years there. And Campbell Village is set up in such a way that we're looking towards like a whole farm initiative. Something. I'm kind of focused on talking. Thank you. And yeah, so the idea of biodynamics is everything is sustained from within. So there's the dairy farm which has the cows, the pigs, the chickens, the sheep, which produces. There's some of our folks. Which produces the manure that goes to the vegetable garden, which grows vegetables for the 250 people that live there. And then in 1987, a healing plant garden started, which is absolutely stunning, which grows herbs for drying, for teas and salves and what have you. And in 1998, something dawned on us that we were still buying our seeds. And it dawned on us that humanity has been growing and saving seeds for thousands of years. Why don't we? And we started in 1998. So Turtle Tree Seed, Biodynamic Seed Initiative. Turtle Tree gets its name from a North American legend where the turtle comes out of the sea with the earth on its back. And we started, and we didn't know what we were getting into. And what we got into turned out to be something very special. Is that when you grow seed, you grow, because nature is so abundant, you have more than you have that your needs meet. So what are you going to do with it? So we have to start a company, because we grew far too much seed for just our vegetable garden. So we started a company. So then we have a business. And we started with maybe 20 varieties. This is in 1998. And now we are up to, at last count, 370 varieties of vegetables, flowers and herbs. And I must say it is a privilege every day to work with seed. I am in awe of seed. And I realized by becoming a seed grower, I realized that there is seed everywhere. When you go and you walk in the, along the paths and wild areas, everything is going to seed. And it's there to be collected if you so wish, or it's there to continue its growth to the next generation of those plants. So our primary focus is to care for the land, that whatever we do, that we will leave the land in better condition than when we came to it. And we want to grow the best possible seeds. And now we have a company that distributes it throughout North America. I have a little table over there with catalogues and some more information, because this is just an introduction. And one of the beautiful benefits of our seed initiative is that we encourage people to save seed, that don't just rely on companies to grow your seed, and don't rely on big companies to grow your seed. There are 26 people involved, full-time and part-time, with Turtle Tree Seed, and 16 of those have developmental differences. And we actually run a company like that, and it works. And also one of the most beautiful things, I think, that the part of my work is that now and again, a seed packet will arrive in the mail with a letter. And the letter will say something like, "This seed has been growing for generations on my farm, and now there's no one to take it on. I wondered if we could pass it on to you, that maybe you can keep this variety going." And I realized how precious seed is, because once a variety goes, it's gone, and it will never come back again. So there's a great joy and privilege in working with seed, but also responsibility. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Ian. Now moving from the sea to the farm, we have Jesse here from Rock Hill Farm in Mohawk to share another vast field of opportunity.
Hello, good morning. Thank you all for coming out here today. I was asked to represent the young farmer here, and I'm really out of my element. I'm in awe and I'm learning just as much this morning as I have this whole year. So, you know, I started the farm in 2013. I bought an old farm in Mohawk. I bought some chickens, and I started rotationally grazing my chickens on pasture. And I started growing vegetables in all of the ground that they were fertilizing. Since then, I've also gotten some pigs and some turkeys, and do meat birds as well. And I started selling at the farmers market in Cooperstown. And it's such a strange community in Cooperstown. They surround the farmer. They're connected to the public. These guys' origins are connecting the dots like nobody that I've ever seen before. They're putting the farmer in touch with the community, with the kids, with the parents, with the restaurant. It's really just what we need to get across is that it's a community. It's a family. Your community is your family, and everything goes together. Well, I'm freezing up here, guys. I had some things that I was going to say, and they kind of all went out the window as I just was more inspired by the speakers that came up in front of me. So that is it. I'm the young farmer here. I'm inexperienced, and I have a lot to learn, but it takes these guys all to connect the dots and make it all happen. So you're going to hear from the market manager, Shannon. She does a great job of connecting the dots. The seed saving is a dream of every farmer, I imagine, and it's just one that you don't have time for until you really, I imagine, put all of your eggs in that basket. So I definitely want to come back here after the market. I just left the market. I hope some of you have come from the market or are going to the market in Cooperstown today. I'm on my way back there right now, but I want to come back here and see how this finishes up today so I can hopefully get in touch with some of these people that it looks like I need to know everybody at every booth here. So thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, moving on to the market. We have Shannon here, and she's representing LCO 2000.
Hi. I have the privilege of managing the Cooperstown Farmers Market. It's a large year-round market, and our main mission is to provide a low-cost sales channel for sustainable farm operations and facilitate a direct connection between the farmer and the producer. So I'm very lucky in that my job is a full-time position through the nonprofit LCO 2000. A lot of market managers are part-time or even volunteer. But it was kind of a long road to get here. I did not grow up on a farm, and I never considered agriculture as a career when I was younger. So what happened was I went to the University of Delaware, and I did end up majoring in animal science, basically just because I like animals, but I didn't really have any plans of what to do with that degree, and I didn't do anything with it for about 4 years. And then I decided that I wanted to do something that mattered and made a difference, and I figured we need food to eat, so what's more important than growing food? And I found the Rogue Farm Corps. It's an internship program out in Southern Oregon, and I spent a summer on a vegetable farm out there. And I loved it, but then at the end of the internship, it was kind of like, okay, now what? Because I didn't have a family farm to go home to, I didn't have any land, I didn't have any money. It was obvious that I wasn't just going to magically start farming. So the more I got involved and looked around, the more I realized there were a lot of other opportunities in agriculture besides just actual farming. We have a lot of good farmers growing food now, and we're starting to see some issues with what happens to the food after it's grown. So an example of that is food deserts, which has become a pretty hot topic. You can see on this map of Otsego County, We have several in our county. The green is people who have to travel over 10 miles to get to a grocery store, and the yellow is people who have to travel over 20 miles to get to a grocery store. So there's a lot of organizations, even locally, working to combat this issue, and one of those is the Food and Health Network of South Central New York. They are an 8-county coalition working to create food-secure communities and a strong regional food system. So they work, one of the many things they do is working with farmers to get certified for the Farm to School program. So even if these kids don't have access to this food at home, at least they can eat it for lunch while they're at school. And another example, getting really popular nationwide, is mobile markets. So even if it's not realistic to have a large market in one place in all areas of the county, you can have a mobile market that drives around and spends an hour or two in each place, and then you get access to more people that way. So those are just a couple examples of what people are working on now. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we also have an issue with food waste. So a third of all food produced for human consumption ends up in the landfill around the world. And you can see that a majority of what we're wasting is produce. A lot of people are working on some really cool ideas for how to solve this issue, and a great example I found was City Harvest in New York City. They have a food rescue program that is going to divert 59 million pounds of food from the landfill to needy families this year alone. And they operate 22 trucks that run 7 days a week, picking up from 2,500 different food donors and delivering that food to 500 shelters and food pantries. So clearly that takes a lot of coordinating, and this organization alone right now is currently hiring for truck drivers, a transportation manager, a finance director, a special events manager, and more. So it's kind of like the opportunities are endless. In the end, we need a lot of people with a lot of different skills working in food and agriculture. So you can be a lawyer and work for the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. If you're good at business planning and finance, you can work with organizations like we have CADE right here in Oneonta that helps the farmers write their business plans and find funding. If you're good at math and physics, you can work as an agricultural engineer and create the next best tractor. And even if you want to live in New York City where there isn't a farm in sight, but you want to work in agriculture, you can work for organizations like Grow NYC. So you can really get involved with a lot of different ways. And I think the best advice I ever got was actually at this conference last year. Laura Legnick was the keynote speaker. And after the conference, I went up and asked her, do you think we need more farmers actually in the dirt growing the food in these innovative ways? Or do you think we need more people like you that are doing the research and writing books and kind of supporting these farmers? And she told me to just do whatever calls to you and do what you are going to be the best at. And shortly after that, I got this job opportunity, and so I decided to take her advice, and here I am now.
Hi, I'm back. So again, my name is Dana, and I am the co-owner. I'm the co-owner of Origins Café, and during the last 6 years, I have found myself in the position of running the kitchen. So this involves collaborating with local farmers to organize what ingredients are coming into the kitchen, deciding how they will be prepared, and planning weekly, sometimes daily menus that reflect what ingredients are seasonally available. Our kitchen and our greenhouse dining area are vitally connected to what happens in the field. And as a business, we have decided to work directly with the farmers, so we're cutting out the middleman, and although we're oftentimes paying a higher price for food, that money is going directly to the farmer. The farmers that we have partnered with, such as Jesse, have taught us to treasure the land and to understand the natural rhythms of the seasons. So it's been a really great education in just understanding what the land has to offer and the quality of those ingredients. So a lot of the people who have spoke have talked a lot about the moral implications of what we're eating. The impact that agriculture has on the environment, the desire to build community through food, a lot of the dogmas and dictates and the virtuousness of eating in this way. And the question is whether or not any of these moral implications matter if the food doesn't taste good. Ultimately, can restaurateurs and chefs and consumers be inspired to change the way that they're eating if the food isn't delicious? And so from the kitchen, it's been really evident that this movement is going to be based on conviction and good flavor. And fundamentally, it's the work of the plant breeders, of the farmers, and of the cultural traditions that make this type of food really irresistible. When you have right, flavorful ingredients, you can cook food very simply, and it will be extraordinary because it tastes like what it is. So, in short, farmers like Jesse make our work really easy because by growing really, really ripe, delicious ingredients, they can be prepared with minimal effort and taste really, really good. As Alice Waters, a personal, there she is, a personal hero who was one of the pioneers of the farm-to-table movement, in the 60s and 70s, said this, that farming is at least 85% of cooking because it is taste that will truly awaken people and bring them back to their senses and back to the land. So farmers are essentially the key to good flavor because they have the knowledge to choose the right seeds for a specific place, to plant them in an advantageous way, and to tend to the plants to bring them to their perfect moment of ripeness. Healthy soil is also really integral in creating good food because healthy soil leads to higher antioxidant levels, which impacts taste, aroma, and mouthfeel. So a lot of industrial, conventionally raised food tends to be very dependent on nitrogen and other synthetic fertilizers, which supply the plant with a lot of energy, and so they grow very big very quickly, but oftentimes are really high in starches and sugars, and that's really at the cost of antioxidants, which add a lot of flavor to the food. And I don't know about you, but for me, a diet high in starches and sugars is not always adequate, and so a lot of these plants are really lacking in flavor because of that. And in addition, because of pesticides, the plant isn't often producing its own defense mechanisms, and so the defenses that plants naturally have are also antioxidants, and so all of that adds a lot to the flavor. So there's two really interesting projects I'd like to talk about that really show the interplay between plant breeders, seed companies, farmers, and chefs. And we mentioned earlier the International Slow Food Movement, and there's an incredible project underneath that umbrella that's called the Ark of Taste. And the Ark of Taste is essentially a living catalog that shows a lot of distinctive foods that face extinction. So it touches on animal breeds, on fruits, on spices, grains, beverages, all sorts of different food traditions that had been passed down for generations in different areas. And because they were so prized by the people who ate them, those traditions really persevered. But as major food companies came to dominate and began to streamline the types of crops that were being raised, there was a lot of homogenization and standardization in the taste. Right now, 1% of farms in the United States grow almost half of the food that is produced. And corn and soybeans account for more than half of all acres that are harvested. And so with this, there is a homogenization. And so by identifying and celebrating the diverse food and flavors, we can keep them in production and preserve the farming traditions and cultural traditions. These foods are linked to the place and the community that protects them. And without action, these foods cannot exist for generations to come because they are endangered by biological, commercial, and cultural reasons. Another compelling story that really shows how flavor, taste, and chef can influence the future of food is the creation of varieties such as the honey nut squash. I don't know if you guys have seen these small squash at markets or if you've had them before, but they're super delicious. And this actually was inspired by Dan Barber, who's a really famous chef downstate. He runs Blue Hill. And he has worked closely with Michael Mazurek, who is a plant geneticist, and they have crossed different varieties of squash to create this. And this is 10 times sweeter and has 10 times more squash flavor than a typical butternut squash, and it's a lot harder. And through a lot of trials, they've seen that this is resilient, it can grow in abundance, and it's a really great crop. And so they partnered with High Mowing Organic Seeds in Vermont, and started to disperse the seed to any farmer who wanted it. And so there was a great collaboration between a chef who was looking for the flavor, a plant geneticist, and a seed company to begin distributing this. And these seeds are not genetically modified or patented. So really, it was a chef who inspired this new, unique way to create a flavor. And so that was an amazing story about just the way that all of these different pieces can kind of interplay and collaborate and work together. And so the health of small-scale sustainable agriculture might very well be dependent on these sorts of healthy relationships. I'm never going to be a plant geneticist, but I depend on plant breeders and farmers, and as a chef, there are ways I can reciprocate the extraordinary work that they do. And so we're going to need these kinds of relationships to reinvigorate small-scale farming in the future. And the next speaker is going to be Dan Glappin. He's going to talk about the role of politics in food.
All right. Good morning. So let me just say that not everybody's weird like me and reads regulations and laws for fun. So I'll try to make this as exciting as possible. I am really inspired by the speakers who have gone before me. Their knowledge and dedication to their field is truly amazing. For somebody that buries their noses in regulations, it's often nice to wake up and see what's going on in the field and on the front line. Okay, so I work for the Otsego County Conservation Association. We were founded in 1968. And consider ourselves to be Otsego County's foremost environmental organization. I am their environmental planner and professional cheerleader for all causes related to the environment, local, state, and federal. Our mission is to promote the appreciation and sustainable use of Otsego County's natural resources through research, education, advocacy, planning, resource management, and practice. It's a mouthful. We just love the environment. That's a way to remember us. Okay, so our vision is basically to promote the idea of science-based environmental conservation. Too often, environmental issues are politicized. They're seen as a right versus left issue. We want to take that out and focus on science and people. And through the leadership of our executive director and our staff, this is what we try to do every day. So our programs, we have three. The first is education and outreach. Then we focus on research and management, and then policy and planning. I really work in these two fields right here. We have a program director and an executive director who are amazing on the education and outreach component. But for me, I believe it's really important for me as a policy person to focus on how we can advance science, turn that into effective policy, and bridge and depoliticize any issue related to environmental protection. So, careers in government, there's a study done by Purdue University in 2010 which estimates that there are 6,200 job openings annually at the local, state, and federal government level. Don't be afraid of usajobs.com, it's not that evil. Just focus on looking for those openings, okay? So, from a policy standpoint, rather than focus on what job you could possibly do in government, I want to focus on cool projects and initiatives to get you guys excited about the field of policy. So first I'd like to focus on is the Chesapeake Bay program. This program involves several jurisdictions from the federal government all the way down to 7 state governments, several regional governments, tons of local governments, agencies in every field ranging from agribusiness to technology to science to higher education institutions to environmental groups like mine. This is an important thing because when we look at cleaning up something as large as the Chesapeake Bay, the agricultural community is on the front lines. And working for government agencies tasked with facilitating this initiative is challenging, but this represents a humongous opportunity because if we are to meet environmental regulations, everyone from seed to table will have to work together to make sure we balance economic viability of our farm operations with environmental protection. At the state level, the New York State DEC runs our Chesapeake Bay program. Some of you may think of the DEC as an evil regulatory agency. I promise it's not. They need people who understand agriculture at the local level. They need young people who are willing to work on farms to balance environmental protection, again with economic viability. Many of the programs and agencies here today work with farmers in a voluntary sense to incorporate conservation measures, whether it's planting a riparian buffer, whether it's building manure storage, whether it's adapting to the effects of climate change. These are all initiatives that farmers, through their initiative and through help from the government agencies, can actually do. And so this is super important. Again, so another field we like to focus on is science. This is at the state level and at the federal level. There's a big push to get people who are interested in science, technology, engineering, and math into the field of government. And an interesting initiative right now is I was looking at the USDA's Office of the Chief Economist, and they basically prepared a report which provides information on people from farm to table to actually how best to adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. And through the preparation of this report, it involved people from multiple fields, again, from the farmer all the way to the engineer, all the way to the contractors building farm structures, all the way to local planning boards and zoning boards. This resource, while coming down from the federal level, affects us all and is intended to help us create jobs, again, while protecting the environment. And at the state level, the New York State Department of Agriculture, in collaboration with our local soil and water conservation districts, created a program known as the Climate Resilient Farming Program. Agriculture contributes a significant amount to global greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, rather than establishing a regulatory threshold on them and punishing them, people at the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, along with the soil and water conservation districts, work with farmers to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, increase the health of their livestock, and increase the health of their soil and water quality, while again maintaining economic viability. For example, in fiscal year 2016, nearly $3 million were provided to local farmers to help them lead the charge in the fight against climate change. And from an education standpoint, I like to focus on the USDA's National Institute for Food and Agriculture's Ag in the Classroom initiative. This program gets down to the lowest level of school, like the elementary school kids, all the way up to the high school kids, and then they really teach about the importance of agriculture in their daily lives. And as we've heard today, many kids from the city are often not connected with agriculture in the way they should be. Being from San Francisco, California myself, I didn't receive an education in agriculture until I entered college, and I found that to be very disappointing and highly remiss. So I really am a huge advocate of this program. At the New York State level, there's 53,000 elementary age students receive training through the agricultural literacy program, including my 9-year-old son in Oneonta School District. 5,000 students will learn how to grow food in 2015, and 230 new educators were trained in Ag in the Classroom curricula. And this is incredibly important because these 53,000 kids and 5,000 kids and 230 educators will then provide their knowledge down to the next generation of elementary age students and next generation of educators. And hopefully this will be a sustainable, momentous opportunity to improve agricultural education in our community. So, in sum, I want to tell you like a story. Okay, so the Grand Canyon was initially this humongous block of rock, and through the persistence of water, they were able to cut through the stone and eventually create this humongous structure. If you're looking for a career in government, too often we are disappointed and depressed about the inability to break through these massive online job search databases. But if you have a vision and you start early and you reach out to people at the state agencies, you often find that we're lonely. We love to help people. We are very passionate, often too passionate about our fields. So don't be afraid to apply for those jobs online, but also don't be afraid to reach out to people within the agencies. Even Commissioner Ball himself, I'm sure that he'd love to talk to you guys. The more you reach out, the more you put yourself out there, the more projects you try to advance, the better off you will be. Trust me, the only way I got this job was I just came up with a project, demanded that I do it, and I got hired. So if someone like me can do it, you guys are way ahead of where I am, and I think you guys can do it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. All right, so moving feed, to farm, to market, to table, to government opportunities and beyond. Hannah is here to speak for WOOF USA, an incredible organization that has been really influential for us in the beginning of our work here in Cooperstown. We both traveled and we host volunteers through this network, so Hannah's coming to speak on opportunities through WOOF.
Hi, I'm Hannah Savio, and I'm here representing WOOF USA. And for those of you who aren't familiar with WOOF, it is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, which is a network of farmers who welcome people onto their land to learn and participate in the farm work, and in exchange, those people are provided room and board. And there is a really wide diversity of farms and opportunities to learn skills within the WOOF network. So my job for the summer, I've been the upstate New York ambassador for WOOF USA, and I've been traveling around and visiting all of the host farms in upstate New York. And it's been a whole lot of fun getting to travel just all around the state and meet all sorts of people. So I've been gathering feedback, sharing resources, and as a representative of WOOF, just making sure that they're doing what they say they're doing on the website, on their profile. One of the questions that I ask every WOOF host is, why are you a part of this network? And one of the most powerful responses that I heard was one WOOF host who told me that she is part of the program because it gives her hope. She felt like she was working really hard to regain some of the skills and knowledge that her parents and grandparents had and didn't really pass on about farming and homesteading and how to grow her own food. And she was sort of disheartened sometimes by not seeing people who were also trying to do the same thing in the world. But being able to meet people through WOOF who were interested in learning that knowledge from her, the feeling that she could help share that and pass that information on really gave her a lot of hope for the future. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things that WOOF can provide, is the connection, a community of people who are interested in changing things on a small scale and sharing that knowledge, making those connections. Yeah, it can be a really wonderful opportunity to meet people who are actively working to change the food system in a small scale and might need a little extra help, but they're willing to teach you about what they're doing. So it's a really simple and amazing way to get your foot in the door to the food system and to meet people and have an amazing time and grow yourself in the process.
Well, we're very thankful for all of these representatives of the respective career fields to be involved here today and share what moves them. You all have an exciting day ahead of you here. I just want to close with one last thought. To us, food is sacred, and I want to share this prayer as you go forth in the day. We eat not simply to satisfy our own appetites, we eat to sustain ourselves in the tasks that we have been given. We eat to nourish the vehicle of giving, we eat to sustain our task of world repair, our quest for harmony, peace, and justice. So, thank you so much, enjoy the day, and it's been our honor to be here today.